good to see you again, guys. We're going to continue with our next panel, an innovative future of sport, key insights into the next major technological advancements. After that, we have lunch, you'll be pleased to hear. Now then, one of the reasons that the football industry is so compelling is because it's so relentlessly forward-looking. I'm going to completely brazenly steal a phrase from Formula One, which is, if you're standing still, you're going backwards. We know that technology is obviously a huge part of this. It's the main driver in many respects. We really came to realize its true importance during the pandemic as we were locked down with Zoom and Teams helping us connect with family and friends when we couldn't meet up in person. And we also were witness to how rapidly things can evolve, particularly in my world, particularly in broadcast. E-football tournaments came in really, really quickly. Broadcasters then revived match archive from many years gone by with modern-style watch-alongs as well. And when football returned, they piped in realistic stadium sound to improve the viewing experience, despite there being no crowds actually there. But what now, with the world returning to normal? Will we see virtual reality, augmented reality really kick on? How can, one of the themes that we heard in one of the earlier roundtables here, personalization, reach the next level? How can interactivity reach the next level? Inside sport itself, who will next take the smart step with data? Because that's a big area. And then there's, of course, 5G technology, bringing higher video quality and reduced latency, the potential to deliver immersive and, again, interactive user experiences, not just on the telly, inside and outside stadiums and sports arenas as well. In short, so much to be excited about, but really good to get a handle on it in this next session. So acting as moderator, please welcome on stage the Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder at La Source, Jean-Baptiste Alliot. Bienvenue, Jean-Baptiste. Great to see you. Also, another 4 speakers to welcome on stage. Keep that applause going for the EVP of Digital Innovations from the DFL Group, Andreas Heiden. Also, CEO and founder of Fanatics, Sam Matthews. Co-founder and Chief Growth Officer at Slate, Will Brook. And SVP and Division Head Property Solutions at Endeavour Sports, Joe Januszewski. The crowd is just filling up for you, Jean-Baptiste. I'm sorry. They're just wanting to be fashionably late, because tech is cool, and they don't want to be the first ones in the room. So we'll fill up for you. Over to you, so the floor's yours.
Thank you, David. Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to have such a distinguished panel and to have this crowd. To be honest, I was saying to Andreas and the guys out there, it's a real pleasure to actually be back physical. We all love the digital world, but to be honest, face-to-face is also a lot better. So we only have 40 minutes, so I'll try to make it quick because there's a lot of insights on this panel. Just like I've been hearing, and just like David just mentioned, innovation is at the core of an industry that wants to remain relevant. And I think that fans, and we've seen it over the last months, once they were not in the stadium, were actually at the core of the product. So we will start this panel a bit on taking a step back, and in an era since few years of a connected fan, which changes from a national or a global fan. We really talk about a connected fan today. I want to ask the different panelists in terms of, and starting first with you, Andreas, with regards to the DFL as a rights holder, how do you, to which extent that's of importance to you? And we know the challenges in terms of attention and competition with other forms of entertainment. So to which extent fan and Gen Z or Gen Alpha is of paramount importance, and to which extent you use innovation to actually address those?
Thank you very much. So from our side, as a DFL, we have the so-called glass-to-glass strategy. Our business model starts with the glass of the camera lens here in a beautiful stadium and ends with the glass at the TV set or the mobile phone or whatever devices people are going to enjoy football in the future. For us, technology is irrelevant. It's the application of technology. So we have to focus on the end customer and the young target group to understand how their user behavior is changing throughout the last years, has been changing and will be changing, and what forms of content, which lengths of content, which steps of content, in which form do they want to have it presented, on which devices do they want to have it presented, and at the end, what kind of business model can derive from that, and can we create as a league to, at the end, help the sports ecosystem grow.
Okay. Yeah, and Will, on that, for me, in terms of new demands, have you seen at Slate, because you're serving many teams, Do you have a difference between pre-COVID and today? Have you seen any difference in terms of engagement and where they're at?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, JB, for being here and all of World Football Summit. So yeah, we work with over 100 social media teams for their social media. And one of the things we've seen is there was a huge spike in engagement during COVID as fans were struggling to find a way to engage with their team. They didn't have live game content to be able to tune into. So they very much were interested in trying to find any way, specifically digitally, a way to stay in touch with their favorite team or league or organization. So we were seeing a lot of interesting things with user-generated content being a kind of a stopgap solution for a lot of sports teams to try to have new content for fans to engage with. So an example would be when the NBA shut down for 2 weeks. Right after that, House of Highlights reported 90% of their content was user-generated content. So, or players doing behind-the-scenes content from their homes, cooking, playing with their dogs, that kind of stuff. So that kind of personal element of engaging with the team and the players itself was a very new way and definitely amplified during COVID.
Okay, and I'm turning it to you now because esports is still very young, but you've been amazing in terms of in-venue or even at-home engagement. So I was wondering, because we talked about it, a bit the decentralized or the autonomy that you give to the fans or to the people you're touching with. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, it's a little hard to hear that. I think it was about engagement and how we handle
exactly.
online engagement. I think the thing about esports is we have a lot of it's on live streams, right? So all of our players are on Twitch or on YouTube, and so there is this kind of element of real-time engagement. You're actually able to talk with the player, get him to do something, donate, be a part of that interaction. And so the breadth of content that you can get out of your esports, because it's inherently digital, even if the league isn't playing, there's plenty of content that you can create because they can just get online and start streaming from anywhere. All they need is a device and a computer. And hey, everyone, I'm Sam. I run an esports team, one of the biggest ones called Fnatic. So we have about 60 gamers, of which we have those are pro players, and then a set of, say, 30 creators who are actually the big difference between us and a football team is we actually manage people who are just creating content, and they're doing that through YouTube and Twitch. So I think it is actually just a pure content proposition, and I think that's where there's like the benefit of that engagement happens, really.
Okay, and so you don't have any kind of protection of the IP. I mean, traditional sports teams tend to be a bit protective or anything. Here, you really let the fans do whatever they want with your IP, or is that?
I mean, the thing is like, they sell the game skins, they sell things. So the reality is for them, they want us to do content. We can't, for example, take a piece of their game footage and then put other brands' logos on it in a way that's cut up and sold, as it were. But you can do streams, you can do. So there are some limitations, but it's definitely not the same way as like media rights in football, where it's very hard to sort of cut between some of the. But that's also the benefit of football because we don't have media rights. So.
The same value.
Yeah.
Joe, if you want to step in here around the maybe the fan engagement, but for me it's always a bit difficult to speak only about Gen Z and Gen Alpha because at the end of the day you want to drive revenues, and it's not necessarily those who will pay in the end or who have the highest wallet. So how do you address that in Endeavor?
Sure. Thanks, Jean-Baptiste and WFS. Great to be here. That is the great challenge. I'm Joe Januszewski. I'm with William Morris Endeavor all of like 3 weeks, so you can see the logo is a little bit off. That's my previous employer on the team side, but 23 years on the team side and in the States. And clearly for teams, and now my job is supporting teams and helping them drive revenue globally and understanding how best to take the data, these incredible data streams that technology allows us to capture, and then best figure out how to deploy it. Because that's the real challenge, right? We can all get access to data, various streams. However, what do you do with it, and knowing how fast media cycles are churning and how important it is to be real-time relevant. We were just talking about that backstage. Trying to keep up with content providers and keep up with things that are relevant, because as soon as you've seen it, it's already old news. And that on the team side, on the property side, is the big challenge, because the Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, really the younger, the digital natives as we call them, have a voracious appetite for this. But to Jean-Baptiste's point, they're not yet with the share of wallet that the teams necessarily are applying for. They're not probably going to be a season ticket holder or a box holder or making decisions at corporations who can spend a lot of money in advertising as a sponsor or a corporate partner. So for the teams, where a lot of the education owners really is that it's a stair-stepped effect. We have to personalize as a word, previous folks on stage use customization. We use a lot of that. We need to customize the experience and understand that we're not necessarily going to be able to monetize the data to the user immediately. It's about building avidity, building connection points, personalizing it to make it relevant to them so that we can move them up, kind of, we call that avidity tree, to become a more passionate fan and ultimately subscriber, purchaser, consumer, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect, because I was just thinking in terms of like, to deep dive a bit more into the technologies or the product themselves. It's to meet the new demands of the fans, you need technology today. So sports organizations need to engage with new service provider, potentially technology startups, to actually be more, like you said, immersive, interactive, personalized, or to try to create some kind of a cultural experience. From that point, what you've just said is very much interesting. And Andreas, I know you talk about the end value. Do you have like a concrete example? I know you did some mixed reality, I mean, using the 5G. So can you just, immersive is a big word, or it's maybe a buzzword, but can you tell us more?
Yeah. So before you deliver something to the end customer and maybe get the fame for it and people love it, you have to do the groundwork. And you have to do the groundwork that no CEO, no CFO loves. You have to invest in infrastructure, and you have to have a sort of failure culture where you need to experiment, try new stuff that most of the time works, but sometimes doesn't work.
How many times you failed in TFL?
I don't know, 10% of all trials. But at the end, you have to learn something from it. And having a clear strategy of full control of the ingredients of innovation, data, video, audio, and an archive, you can then build products on top. And all technology that we are looking for and try to find relevant applications, it's always a triangle of 5G, AI, and AR. In the AI world, we're working together with AWS. In the 5G world, we're working together with Vodafone, and in the AR world, we work together with agencies. And for example, something we did already in October 2019, so pre-COVID, was the in-stadium experience. You're on the pitch, you want to see more about the player, you take your phone out, the pitch gets recognized, the data gets in real time, 200 milliseconds it takes to have the data within the app, and you can follow the player around, you see the current speed, etc. And that was 2019. So we are always try to be a little bit ahead of the game, try out, maybe be a little bit too early, and then learn and adapt and change. And you will hear soon about the next generation of this in-stadium experience. It's all about, let's say, enriching a fan experience without replacing the love of the game.
And it's in venue and at home, or is that? Yeah.
So we have in venue, we have an at home case, we have an interactive feed with our partner Sky Perfect in Japan, which all leads at the end to an individualization, personalization. We're coming from one world feed to now 6 satellites around the world, and one day we're going to deliver 1 million individual streams.
Okay, impressive. Will, you're a startup. You are the only one here. You have a shirt today. Normally you have only T-shirts, but well done on that.
Really had to dress up for the event. Yeah.
Well done. Can you tell us more about the product? I mean, how you are innovative. I know you are not the CTO necessarily, but can you tell us how you manage to try to help teams in terms of delivering this new experience?
Yeah, definitely. So Slate, we're a content creation platform that is supported by most of the sports teams in the US. And one of the reasons we're excited to be here is we're also starting to expand into Europe. We're just 2 years old, but specifically the problem that we're solving is social media has gotten out of control. There's more platforms than ever, more formats than ever. We all know that TikTok and Reels took social media by storm, and now YouTube just copied them a couple months ago. It's probably going to go to Facebook. Well, Facebook is going to be launching TikTok Reels to the Facebook platform. It's probably going to go to Twitter. So as a sports team, how do you stay on top of this constantly changing environment with all these different formats and make sure that you're reaching your fans where they're going? Because those fans are changing where they are every day. So the way we solve that problem is we're a one-stop shop solution for them to create content that's relevant to Twitter or to Instagram or to Pinterest, Facebook, TikTok. And the reason why that's so important is we know that at least the millennials and the Gen Z market, 48% of them prefer to watch highlights of games rather than the entire game. Shorter attention span. They only want to see their team scoring. They don't want to see other teams score on them. They're looking for the juiciest, most fun moments. They're not looking to be informed, just pure entertainment. So how do you keep up with that? And that's one of the things that we've been focusing on. We just launched a feature relevant to TikTok that involves timed assets. So that's one example of how can you help a brand that has a very unique identity like a sports team and have their brand identity natively integrate into social media where it still looks like short form video TikTok content, but has all the right unique text or stickers or GIFs or whatever those types of things are unique to the brand. Okay.
And if I can move to the esports, which is always, I find it always a bit different, but you just mentioned you did a partnership with crypto. And there's a bit of a buzzword around the metaverse or all the NFTs and the blockchain technology, but can you tell us why crypto and what do you expect from that in terms of like new technologies or leveraging these technologies as part potentially of a loyalty program or something to actually engage with these new audiences?
Yeah, totally. I think the Crypto.com partnership we just announced is, PSG did the same. They did one with Formula One, UFC. For us, that's one side of that is it's about an exchange, a standard partnership agreement, but there's an element, you mentioned the metaverse, where we see gaming culture and the fact that you have already inside of games the ability to buy cosmetic items like skins, like clothing, etc. So you're buying these virtual goods already, and ultimately the NFT, this new technology is allowing potentially a way in which that kind of completely opens up a digital goods economy or an ecosystem where you might have interoperable goods between games. You might even have, and I think Socios is obviously pushing that way forward in Inter on the shirt and across world football. And I think where we're going to go with this is eventually we're going to have the ability to tie like fan community sort of activities, whether it's voting on the next jersey for the next season, whether it's deciding on who's going to be maybe doing the content or doing a fan jersey, and I think going forward there's a world in which some teams might even become decentralized organizations like a DAO, which is kind of this new concept with crypto, where you might even have like the whole voting mechanism be completely controlled with a token. And I think this is all a lot far-fetched.
Do you see that becoming a reality in terms of like completely decentralized? And
I think that it's an interesting concept, and I think we're in a world in which you're maybe having struggles with fandom, or you're maybe having struggles with sponsorship. Like, it's a crazy way to get exposure and really try something completely new. So maybe not in the tier 1 clubs, but maybe a championship club or whatever it might be. So I do think this kind of layer of there's a lot of noise in crypto, and I think you've got to look past that and find what is useful for you as a brand and how it's going to work. But yeah, I think it's a bit. You could probably speak for the whole 40 minutes on this, but yeah, I hope that helped a bit.
Joe, can you help us navigate a bit this kind of NFT blockchain? And really, today we all speak about it, but the reality, I think, in sports, it's not that no one knows about it, but no one has really found a way, or it's not yet mature. So how do you test? How do you try to have the teams on board? What's What's your insights on that?
Great question. Let's make this interactive for the crowd here in Madrid. How many of you before 5 minutes ago had heard or knew what the term metaverse meant? Raise your hands if you had. Okay, good. So I'm in the majority. I'm happy to see that. 7 of you have heard of metaverse, and the other thousands of us have not. So that just speaks to the non-stop, rapid pace of technology as our central subject today, and then in a more micro fashion, how quickly these new technologies are advancing and they're becoming infiltrated to every part of our lives. Because even like a year ago, I thought Ethereum might have been on the periodical table of elements. Like I literally had never heard it in the context that you hear about it today as a digital currency. And to your question specifically, Jean-Baptiste, it's an incredible challenge. Speaking again as someone who's been on the property side for many years and now supporting properties, to make good decisions about who you're going to go into partnership with. That's how I would maybe narrow that question, because we have seen in the sporting world globally companies, teams, let's say, who jumped on a particular bandwagon of technology and made a real splash around coming into partnership and advertising, even things as fundamental and large as a naming rights deal, only for those companies to dissolve and no longer be, a going concern in a year's time. So I think, and you mentioned UFC, Sam. UFC is an endeavor. Our parent company, they own UFC, and so I've had some good exposure to the Crypto.com deal. They did a massive partnership deal, but they want to explore ways. Could we use crypto as a currency in order for attendance at the next UFC event? Because obviously you want to integrate it and make it more common. And I do think maybe I'm more conservative, but I would take more of a walk before you run approach on the team side. In Dallas, Texas, where I live, the Dallas Mavericks made a splash, the NBA franchise in town, saying that they will take crypto as a payment for season ticket holders, suite holders. It made quite a splash. Nobody really understood what that meant in practice, but it's interesting. And Mark Cuban's very, kind of forward-thinking and wanting to push the envelope. So I think those of us on the club side and representing clubs need to be thoughtful, because what you don't want to do is get into a situation where you go all in with something, and it turns out, oops, that technology actually wasn't the one that we're all going to, it's like going with beta instead of VHS for those of you who are over 45 in the audience, right? So I'm skeptical, but I want to be thoughtful about it, because clearly there is resource in the space and you don't want to miss that train, but you maybe don't want to be in the lead car.
But I mean, just to understand the metaverse thing, to understand everything that's happening, like, for example, the NBA, the NFL did a collaboration with Fortnite, and all of the jerseys got sold inside of Fortnite, the game. There's Travis Scott concerts inside of Fortnite. There's going to be virtual worlds. Basically, your kids are already playing them, whether it's Roblox or Minecraft, so the metaverse is just a term for this kind of virtual goods, virtual currency, virtual worlds that are being created where you have an avatar effectively, and I think you're talking about new revenue streams for clubs. I think that's actually, maybe there's collaborations that can be done with the club's IP inside of virtual economies, such as, whether it's crypto or games or whatever it might be.
Or even direct to avatar. So meaning you would buy a jersey or shoes just in the digital world, but with the brands of your clubs or anything like that. But before I move to social media, you mentioned the embracing innovation. Do you have a playbook for that, Joe, or maybe Andreas, in terms of, like you said, 10% failure, but if there are startups or even like small companies that potentially wants to work with AWS, is there any playbook in terms of, okay, I want to enter the metaverse, how can we work with sports organizations, and how sports organizations or clubs are actually embracing it with the room of, you need to know that you're going to fail potentially, but you need also to take advantage of this opportunity.
I think our playbook starts on page 1 always with the customer centricity. So either we get a clear insight from data points from fans that there are certain movements. So when we invented the vertical video broadcast, we've seen that over 50% of our usage on web, app, and social media was vertical. So we moved to vertical broadcasting on TikTok on the last Super Cup. Over 1 million people watched it, just in Germany and Brazil alone, with our partner OneFootball and Randsport. When we talk with our broadcasters, which is our second target group, we're looking towards the next generation of broadcasting. So talking about metaverse, talking about artificial worlds, will we have a situation in 20 years where I can stand virtually behind the goal when Lewandowski is trying to shoot a goal, and you can place yourself freely in a world like in Minecraft where you're just part of this whole world and you're somehow embedded through glasses, contact lenses, whatever, yes. So the first step has to be, do we have data points which allow us to take the next step? Afterwards, it's a technical feasibility to understand, are we too early or are we at the right point? Or do we have to push the envelope and go to a supplier who can go that far and ask him to do the extra step, and sometimes also have to finance the extra step? And then we're going to go to the public and going to test it publicly, like the augmented reality case we've shown at the Super Cup. We had fans sitting in the stadium, sitting in the lounge, trying it out, giving us customer feedback. And after that, we're going to try to develop a commercial model. So this fourth step in this playbook always starts with the customer and ends with the commercialization.
For an esports team, how does that look like in terms of innovation is in your DNA, I guess, but how does that look like in terms of constantly changing or?
Yeah, I think the benefit of esports is we're not just inheriting like a kind of legacy in a way. We're actually creating one. So we can basically try whatever. So if we're in 8 games, not 1, right? We're in League, Counter-Strike, Dota. We're picking up creators. So in some ways, we're already a hybrid agency / music label. The issue is not how to innovate, it's like what not to do, right? And we don't have like a media rights deal that's guaranteed revenues. So we're actually, a lot of the esports teams like Fnatic are becoming product companies. So we're making more money off selling headphones and keyboards and mice and apparel than we are from media rights or those deals. I mean, sponsors are starting to come. Obviously, we announced Crypto.com. We already have BMW and we've done collaboration with Gucci. So it's like, the innovation is inherent, yes, and a lot of I'm the founder, so I've been in this for 17 years, and that's the good thing about esports is it's still the founders who are still running a lot of the teams and the games, and I think you have to keep up pace with the games because they're evolving every 2 weeks, or a new patch and a new change. So I think it's actually staying still is like impossible. It doesn't work.
Yeah. I want to take a step back a bit more in terms of we spoke a bit of the need for an omni-channel strategy. And you mentioned the media rights where, live sports is still very much important and the broadcasting rights are still very much important. But on the social media and the second screen, and we've seen it with alternative format like the F1 Survive to Drive, where do you stand in terms of what's happening and how do you feed that? And I guess that goes back to Fnatic, where it's a bit, okay, you're an esports team, but you send messages or you try to have a space where you bring e-commerce, internationalizations, all the stuff. So how do you help teams on second screens, on where they are?
Yeah, I think one thing that's been pretty interesting to see is normally a lot of the teams, sports teams that are creating content for fans may have had departmentalized groups for who's creating content for maybe the team's app on the iPhone or Android phone, and then also who's creating content for the social media platforms. And now those organizations, those departments are starting to collaborate more. It's much more scalable if you're creating tons of content and you need to create tons of content and reach every single platform that the fan's on if those organizations are collaborating more effectively. So a specific example of that would be, instead of the social media team that's churning out content every day, trying to also hit TikTok, hit Reels, wherever the next social media platform is going to be, they're also able to create unique content for the NFL app or their website or other things like that, and having it be like a unified approach to creating content and not siloed. So I think the one perfect example of that is a lot of these sports teams and leagues are catching up with having vertical video be the way that they create their content or stream their content on their apps. I think it's something like 94% of people prefer to stream their video vertically rather than horizontally. No one wants to turn their phone around. It's just it's a nuisance. But that's how social media content from the beginning has been captured. So there's kind of this ripple effect that's happening in terms of other formats catching up with how people just most effortlessly want to create that content.
And on this part, UGC, do you do stuff at the DFL like maybe with Windfly, or do you use, or maybe what that was you, Joe? Or?
Yeah, so we invented a new licensing category with this social media matchday feed, where together with the distributed software Greenfly we use with our clubs, content is created in the stadium by the club and is then shared centrally through our broadcasting to our broadcasters around the world. Mm-hmm. And this kind of interactive content is very credible, is very close to the pitch.
Okay. I've been told we're close to the end. Any insights on what's coming up next? If you have, I know it's hard, no one has really a crystal ball, but in terms of innovation or where you see the industry heading, not talking about the metaverse necessarily, but...
I'm going to put a T-shirt out. I know where the metaverse is. Well, I think obviously there's so much to cover here, and I appreciate the time. I wish we had more. I do think when it comes to innovation, there's so much test and trial that's required. And honestly, I give kudos to Andreas at his organization. If they're only failing 10% of their tests, they're doing a heck of a job. I know on the analytics team that we started and built in Texas at the baseball club I worked for, we failed a lot. But our goal was to test and to do as good a job to winnow a lot of the outside variables, and we called it noise, that we weren't sure if it was going to be impactful or not ultimately to the end user. So we do these very small tests, and that's something I think is very important. We talk about technology not outstripping relevance, right? Because again, it's the old, baseball is very famous for the Moneyball concept, using analytics to get a better understanding of success ratios. But in many cases, you had teams who were just, again, curating data for data's sake, but they didn't know how to deploy it, or they couldn't deploy it quickly enough to make it relevant before, again, it was already dated and it was no longer relevant. So I think when it comes to technology, who knows if crypto exchanges are going to be the way that we all affect commerce in the next 5 years? It might be, or it might go the way of the dodo bird. What I think is important is to not be afraid of technology, make sure that you are testing, but perhaps depending on the business journey, and I think it's fascinating with the business that Sam's in, because like you said, they are their own content creators, and they're making it up as they go. Their playbook, you're writing literally as you go. You asked about a playbook.
Yeah.
There is no playbook. You make it up as you go. That's very invigorating and exciting. Also can be a little bit scary, but clearly you've had great success with that. On the more traditional stick and ball sports, we need to step maybe a little bit more cautiously, if you will, but look to places in the world of esports or in the social media content creation and data metrics folks to help us perhaps build that roadmap a little more carefully.
It's a bit doing the homework first, maybe building the infrastructure or making sure you know what you want to do, and then potentially innovate or push the boundaries. All right. I think we're done. Received the signal that it's okay for our panel and that I should stop. So thank you guys for your insights. Thank you for everyone joining online. I hope you are not too freezing like us on stage, to be honest, but that was lovely to be back physically in venue and to speak about innovation in football. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.